Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. Wanted to throw out a video today just to kind of update you on what I've been doing. As always, this is Terry, your host. Tim's on vacation, as you know. First thing I want to talk about is just some kind of cool geographic information, at least cool to me because maybe I'm like a geographic nerd. So last week I was in a couple of state capitals out west. I was in the Mile High City, which of course is Denver. And then I was in the capital of Wyoming, where I had to sit for a little bit because of high winds. So here's the interesting thing about those state capitals. Denver, as everybody knows, the Mile High City, is a little bit above 5,200 feet above sea level. Wyoming's capital, Cheyenne, is actually higher than Denver. You don't get that sense of it because it's not right up against the mountains or anything, but it is higher, and if you drive up I-25, you climb quite a bit. So Wyoming's capital is over 6,000 feet. But neither of them are the highest altitude state capital in the country. That distinction belongs to the capital of New Mexico, which is Santa Fe. Santa Fe is a little bit over 7,100 feet above sea level. And in fact, there's a whole string of bits of information on the internet about handling the altitude if you go out to Santa Fe. But I do recommend you go out to Santa Fe because it's a beautiful area. I think New Mexico is a really beautiful state. Another thing that's not a fact, but I'll fight anybody about it, is that New Mexico has the best state license plates. Now, I'm not talking about specialty plates that you pay extra for, or affinity plates that support some organization that you want to support. I'm talking about just standard issue state license plates. For years they had the one with the sun in the middle, and I think that's a native design. And but then they kind of upped their game when they went to that same design, but with like the turquoise color. And then the other plate that they have that is just really cool is it's a black background, but it has red and green chilies on it, which is something that is a specialty of New Mexico. In fact, I've had the occasion to drive through the town of Hatch a couple of times, and I totally recommend doing that because it's cool. Like, you go through Hatch, if you've never been there, if you go through Hatch, you would drive through there as a trucker because it's kind of a shortcut from I-25 over to I-10. So like, I just remember having a load that went from like the Denver area to Tucson and then back again. And cutting through Hatch is a way to cut off a bunch of miles instead of going down to Las Cruces into the Mesilla Valley. But in Hatch, it's really cool because they have like piles of chilies hanging on, I guess, ropes, strings. It's very cool, very cool. And it's a cool little town. So anyway, I strongly recommend putting that on your list of things to check out. Anyway, so I wanted to get into a couple of things. Got off home time yesterday. Currently in Cleveland, waiting for a pickup. I brought a load out here this morning from Delaware. Delivered a load in Pennsylvania, picked up in Delaware, dropped off in Ohio, and I'm here in Cleveland waiting for a load. But kind of a sad weekend because I saw my wife like in our backyard when I went to do some work on one of our rental properties, and I saw one of my daughters you know, in the backyard at a distance. So it's kind of a bummer not being able to hang with them and go in the house and just be around each other. But I will say my older daughters, who are both married, they were super good to me and gave me a bunch of stuff to bring on the road, food, homemade food that they had frozen, so that I can microwave it. So I'm very appreciative of them and my two sons-in-law. They're good guys. And the other reason the weekend was sad was the Buffalo Bills lost. Having said that, I got a lot of respect for Kansas City. Years ago, I used to talk to Andy Reid periodically. We went to the same church. He's a super nice guy, and just, you know, he deserves all the success that his teams have. And KC is a tough team, but I'm proud of the season the Bills had, and they represented Western New York really well. So that's some of the housekeeping. I also want to give a shout out to an anonymous, because I don't know who it is. I don't even know if it's a man or a woman. TMC Transportation driver, who was just passing me on a 2-lane road. He was headed east, I was headed west in Pennsylvania yesterday. And the reason I'm giving that person a shout out is because they took action that avoided what I am very certain would have been an accident with at least one fatality, maybe more. And here's what happened. I was heading west out of Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania on US 322. I get out of town. The speed limit's 55. I get up to the speed limit, maybe slightly over, maybe 56, 57. But I'm not, I don't bomb it through there because, first of all, it was really overcast. It was around freezing, and there's a lot of cross traffic. So that's a place where you definitely want to just be doing the speed limit, basically. So a truck passed me as we pulled away from town as I got up to speed. And then shortly after, a RAV4 passed me. And they just headed off into the distance. And so then a couple of cars came by, headed the other way. And then I see the TMC truck down the road. And everybody knows what their trucks look like. They have the black Peterbilts. They're obviously all flatbeds. So I see this guy and, just looking down the road. And there's some cars behind him, maybe 4 or 5 four-wheelers behind him. As I get about, I don't even know if it was 100 yards. It might have been even less. From encountering him, from passing him, in my hood mirror, my left hood mirror, I see a vehicle. And I'm like, I exclaimed, holy shit. And I got on the brakes. Well, by the time I got on the brakes, by the time I realized what was happening, because I knew there were vehicles behind me, but by the time I realized this person was passing me in their little Ford Escape, he had already started going over to the shoulder. But here's the problem. It's not a full shoulder. It's like a half shoulder with a guardrail. So he was on the brakes and moving to his right. And, it came down to inches. I really feel like it came down to inches. And of course, as y'all know, stuff like that happens so fast, instantaneously, seconds, And so I saw that I looked at my side view mirror and this Ford Escape just took off. And I noticed that all the vehicles behind him were, sorry, I'm trying to, there we go, getting, on their brakes really hard and everything. Of course, they didn't know what was going on because they were probably following her too closely. So anyway, I go up the road, and guess what happens? old Ford Escape person catches the red light that's probably 2-3 miles up the road. So I come right up behind him and just was able to snap some pictures and get their license plate number while we were at the traffic light. So I followed them a little bit farther, and then I had to make a turn on the 970 to just do that little jump over by the Walmart distribution center there outside of Clearfield and just get over to I-80. So when I did make that turn on a 970, PA 970, I just stopped on the shoulder and called the state police and reported the incident. But I also did call later when I got stopped in Ohio last night. I called TMC Safety and gave them the information because I got the full license plate number of the vehicle. But, you know, they ran that TMC driver off the road, and but for the fact that the TMC driver was willing to, you know, put himself and his truck in harm's way, I'm very convinced there would have been at least an offset, you know, head-on collision. And I would have got involved in it because of the way that Ford Escape would have, you know, blasted off the left front side of that Peterbilt. So anyway, shout out to TMC. You know, he was paying attention and saved somebody's life probably. Okay, so I think I mentioned this on somebody else's, maybe Johnson's Logic, on one of his live chats, that I wanted to talk about technology in the trucking industry and how self-driving trucks might impact the industry, how all electric trucks are going to impact the industry. And I do a lot of reading, do studying on stuff like this, trends in the industry. So here's something to note right off the bat. Probably at least 30 out of the 50 states, truck driver is listed as the most common occupation. The state I live in, Pennsylvania, truck driver, number one occupation. States like Texas, truck driver, number one occupation. All over the country, truck driver is at or near the top of the most common occupations in given states. Now, the federal government certainly has oversight over interstate commerce, but we all know that every state has their own regulations, whether it's anything from speed limit, bridge weight limits, you name it, right? And so the idea of self-driving trucks is probably not going to be super politically interesting for a number of reasons. One is if a legislator or governor or something was like all about self-driving trucks, they're necessarily going to cost jobs. The other thing that's going on, though, is that from the perspective of somebody who practiced law, I'm like, well, who do you hold accountable when there's an accident? Do you sue? You can't, there's no driver to sue, presumably. Or, so if it's truly self-driving, where there's not going to be a human in the cab, who do you go after if the truck is actually at fault? Do you go after the company that owns the truck? Do you go after the company that made the truck due to product liability, faulty technology? Who is going to be liable for this? They're all going to be pointing fingers at each other. Well, we know from just kind of some of these semi-self-driving cars that these things don't necessarily operate in the most safe manner. Shadows freak them out. If you think about the technology, I have a 2021 Freightliner. If I think about the technology on this truck, This truck misinterprets guardrails on curves for an object that I'm going to hit. Now, I guess theoretically, if I didn't keep turning the wheel, I would smash into the guardrail. But it also interprets overhead signs as a collision hazard and sounds the alarm. Bridges, overhead, I'm not going to collide with the overpass, but yet it thinks I am. Okay? So there are all sorts of, sensors and things that we use, technology we use that help us be better drivers, but they don't substitute for our brains and our ability to take action and understand what's going on quickly. So, somebody asked a question on one of these live chats. They said I think they said they were 50, and I'm older than 50. Is there going to be an industry left? And the answer is yeah. There's way before the public trusts self-driving trucks anywhere, unless it's on a private road. They are, it's going to be a long time. I don't care about advances in AI. It's going to be a long time. Because from a legal perspective, we want to be able to hold people accountable when something goes wrong. And when you have an inanimate object, how do you hold that accountable? Somebody's got to be responsible. And, so anyway, I think we're a long way from having that be something that we do. The other thing though that I've been reading up about technology wise, all electric trucks. So the rub with all electric trucks is you need to have an ability to regenerate using momentum from the truck like you would see going down a hill. So if you know about locomotives, right? Locomotives have dynamic braking, right? They use the counter electromotive force of the generator that turns the traction motors to brake. And what they do is they dissipate the heat. And I'm kind of oversimplifying this, but they basically have coolers, vent fans and stuff like that dissipate the heat that's generated from that dynamic braking. Because what they do is they turn the motor into, they basically create, instead of creating a source, they reverse it and create a load. So the motors and the generator are opposing the normal electromotive force of those components. So if you've driven a hybrid car, you know that the batteries charge while the car is going downhill if you're not on the gas. So what that means is that electric trucks, and why does this matter? Well, we have all these truck stops and everybody's used to diesel technology and stuff. But electric trucks are not going to be able to haul stuff unless they're stopping to charge across places like, Nebraska, Wyoming, even, a lot of places out west that are mountainous because there's not enough constant regeneration. So maybe across I-80 in Iowa or in New England or in, parts of the, along parts of the Atlantic seaboard. But any place that's flat is not going to lend itself well to this because there's not a regen capability, right? Florida, there's no hills, right? you're either going to have to stop and recharge, and you know, the capacity of batteries is going to be a limiter, and how quickly they discharge is going to be a limiter. And so I don't think that you're going to find a lot of you know, electric trucks on the road. I will say this though, if they have those, it's going to be pretty cool, because those trucks, electric motors generate butt tons of torque. And so, you know, you will have a truck that's, you know, as long as the heat generated by the motors working can be dissipated, you're going to have trucks that'll just freaking haul 40,000 pounds up a steep hill without slowing down. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe, like, check you next time. Bye.